Hello and welcome to this week's video. My name is Anuska Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you've been enjoying my live videos that I've been doing over the last few weeks. If you haven't seen them yet, check out those under the live tab. But I really actually enjoy doing those. And I plan to do a lot more next year, and I'll get back into that in January. But today I wanted to talk about a topic that I think is really pertinent for this time of year, this holiday Christmas time, this season when there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of expectation. It brings up a lot of emotion for most of us, particularly with family, when we haven't seen people in a long time. There's a lot of expectation. And this is when this idea of expressing our feelings can become a challenge. And I wanted to talk about this because there's a book by Bronnie Ware that you may or may not have heard of called The Regrets of the Dying. She was a palliative nurse, and she talks about the 5 main regrets of the dying. Now, number 3 was actually, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. How many of us really express how we feel unless we have to? So first of all, I want to talk about how we handle feelings. For most of us, fall into one of 2 camps, how this can really hinder us and why it's actually the greatest gift we can give to ourselves and others when we do allow ourselves to express how we feel. So are you on the side of the avoider or the side of the oversharer? And I'm simplifying this. I think most people are probably on the side of avoiding. We have different ways of doing it, and so it can look kind of different. But fundamentally, we really fear, whether we are the oversharer or the avoider, we really fear being vulnerable, which might seem a bit of a strange thing to say when I'm talking about an oversharer, but actually there is a big difference between being vulnerable and oversharing, which I'll get to in a minute. But it's really this fear of being vulnerable. And really, we fear being vulnerable because we fear being abandoned, we fear being rejected. That's at the heart of really all of our behavior when we come from ego, which really drives everything. So it's really common nowadays, to be honest. And I see this both in terms of my professional business life and my personal life. You know, ghosting is very common nowadays. People just don't respond. It's like, if I just stop responding, if I just don't respond, this person will get the message. Now, I'm not talking about if you've got a nuisance sales call or someone keeps emailing you and you've already responded, but I'm talking about when you just don't want to go there, you don't want to have the conversation, so you think, do you know what, I can't be dealing with this, I'm just going to ignore them. So we all know the difference, and we've all been there to a greater or lesser extent. Certainly in the dating world, incredibly common to be ghosted. So it's how we deal with emotion for most of us, is I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist. I'm going to sweep it under the carpet and ignore it. So it really hurts us, though. This is the thing. So I'm going to talk about some of the other ways, not just the ghosting, which I think is very common nowadays, but also things like, have you been in a meeting? Or have you been in a situation where you've bitten your tongue because you really fear sharing how you feel? And maybe it's in a work meeting, and maybe you have an idea, but you fear expressing your idea because you fear being rejected, being abandoned, maybe losing your job. It depends on where your mind goes. So we can bite our tongue. It could be in our personal relationships. We don't say how we really feel because we don't want to upset the person. It could be we stuff our feelings and we really internalize it. So we stuff our feelings and we tell ourselves, it's just me, I'm just overreacting. It's my issue. I don't have a right to feel like this, so I'm just going to stuff it. I'm not going to say anything, and I'm just overreacting. So that could be, again, we're still avoiding, but there's different shades of it. It kind of looks a little bit different. Now, maybe you do speak up and you do have the courage to say what you feel, and you get a massive backlash. You might get someone shouting at you, saying all kinds of things. You're mean, you're selfish, you're this, you're that. And then you immediately, again, make yourself wrong. You feel really guilty. And suddenly you start backtracking. Oh, well, I didn't really mean it. I didn't. I mean, you did mean it. You're only backtracking because of their pushback. So you're not owning your feelings. It's very much, if this person doesn't like it, then I'm going to pull back. No, I didn't mean it. Don't worry, I didn't mean it. So I've certainly been there before. I've had to do a lot of work around this myself, I might add. And I can get to that in a minute, but I'm just talking about some of the ways this avoidance can show up. Another one is we wait for the other person to have the difficult conversation. We're very aware there's an elephant in the room. There's something really wrong. Work, home, whatever, personal, professional. There's something really not right, but we are waiting for the other person to bring up the subject, and then we'll talk about it. Just like, no, I'm not going to talk about it because I'll wait for them, because I know that they will, because there's normally someone that does have the courage to speak up. So we generally sort of hide behind that person and wait for them to take that difficult step. And that also might show up that we might not say anything. We might be in a mood, or we might answer in a very monosyllabic way for them to get the message to say, what's wrong with you? Versus just saying what's wrong with us, So it shows up in all these ways, but this is all avoidant behavior in terms of I'm avoiding saying how I feel. And then the final one, which I think is very prevalent as well, is we hide behind texts, WhatsApp messages, emails. We pretend we didn't get something. Oh, I didn't get that email, but we did get it, but we're just pretending we didn't because we didn't want to have the conversation. We did get the text, but we're ignoring it again. That kind of ghosting, that stonewalling, I just don't want to go there. So this is all avoidant behavior. This isn't to judge yourself. And you might think on some level, well, but this is better than me saying how I feel, because there's a bigger risk if I say how I feel and they shout at me, or they don't want to see me anymore, or they don't want to speak to me anymore. But truthfully, there's a few things I would say to that. First of all, that you're the only person that really suffers at the end of the day, because when we suppress our feelings, when we suppress how we feel, and we constantly deny, and it can be small things, it could be little things here and there, but we constantly deny how we are feeling, it doesn't go anywhere. We think if I just push it away, oh, I've dealt with it. It doesn't go anywhere. It eats away at you. And that's when you have to become very good at distracting yourself with being busy at work, going to the gym, going out drinking, whatever your thing is, you have to distract yourself, because I can't possibly feel this stuff in me, because then I have to do something about it. So it eats away at us. And actually, it really makes us sick because it causes a lot of stress in our body. Stress is very inflammatory. And that is really the cause of most of our illnesses and diseases in the world. It's really a suppression of emotion that's at the root of so much of our suffering, more broadly, but also in terms of illnesses and diseases that a lot of us are struggling with or know people that are struggling with. So it really is so important to express how you feel. So the irony of this as well is the ego will say to us, if I don't express how I really feel, I can keep everyone happy around me. I can manage people, I can keep people happy. But we are playing into this persona, this false persona, and we know it's not how we really feel. We know we're pushing stuff away. We're trying to uphold this mask of pretending that everything's okay, when actually we're really seething inside. But we don't want anyone to know that, because we don't want to be rejected. But the irony is, we do get rejected. We might not get rejected in such a blatant way, but we are going to create disconnection. Because if I'm not being true to myself and I'm not really expressing how I feel, I'm putting a wall up around me. I'm wearing this mask. This is not who I am. And I'm creating this disconnection. And this is how we can be in relationships with people, but feel really disconnected and alone because we're not communicating, we're not sharing how we feel. I have personally been in relationships like that before. You're literally living under the same roof with someone and you feel completely disconnected from them because neither of you are really communicating honestly. So from the ego's perspective, it's death to kind of express how we feel because we might get rejected. But truthfully, we're getting rejected anyway because the person isn't seeing who we really are. We've got a wall up, we're pushing people away. we're not letting anyone in. So we're going to feel alone anyway. So why not be truthful, be honest, express how you feel. And if people don't like it, then they're not meant to be in your life anyway. Now, of course, this shows up in the voice. And this is actually a big reason why a lot of people work with me, because they have this fear of expression. And even though we might work on it from a sort of professional perspective, normally they can see patterns in their personal life as well. A lot of people, particularly women that I work with, will have a real fear of having those more challenging, confronting conversations. And this is really, again, having the courage, and it does take courage. My live last week, when I was talking about what it takes to really transform your voice, I did say one of the 4 C's was courage, because it does. You have to be willing to have a conversation that you've never had before. But actually, when you do, this is how you build connection. And Brené Brown obviously become very famous talking about vulnerability. And she talks about vulnerability as really the pathway to true joy, love, belonging, trust, and creativity. It's not just in terms of our interactions, it's even things like sharing our work with people. If we're an artist, if we're, in my case, a singer, there's a vulnerability to sharing your work, again, because we fear that rejection. But we have to see that stuffing it and suppressing it is actually worse. And our voice will just shut down. So we'll probably find that initially, when we do go to have those conversations, our voice might shake, our hands might shake, our heart might feel like it's coming out of our chest. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It means we're just taking a new path, and the ego finds anything new threatening. But this is really the path to true connection, to true belonging, to love, to joy, to all the things we say we want, but we really believe that we just have to keep this wall up to protect ourselves. So just on the idea of vulnerability, and again, Brené Brown does talk about this, but I think it's really important. You might know, and I don't know many people like this. I could probably think of maybe one person off the top of my head. I won't mention any names, who goes to the other extreme. It's 2 sides of the same coin. Most people, I think, avoid. There are some people that overshare. So oversharing is not vulnerability. I know on the surface it might look like it, but normally when we're oversharing, it's because we fear vulnerability. Like when we avoid expressing how we really feel, when we overexpress how we feel, it's really because I fear vulnerability. Because invariably, the people that overshare are oversharing with people that don't know them. They're oversharing with people on the other side of an Instagram Live or Facebook Live, or people that don't know them. They're often sort of talking at people. So this isn't about connection. This is like almost like verbal diarrhea. Like, I have to get this off my chest. And there's a high expectation. Like when people overshare, they're looking for a particular response. They're looking for something that this person is not able to give them, because either they're at the end of a computer screen and they don't know them, or they're oversharing with the person in the supermarket or someone that they've just met, because that isn't a threat. It's a threat to share how you feel with someone that knows you, that's someone that sees you and knows you. It's a lot easier just to share everything and overshare with people that barely know you. They're not going to be able to support you in the way that you think you want. And so what ends up happening is they probably are going to look a bit shell-shocked that you've just literally shared everything at them, and it's going to reinforce your fear of vulnerability. So whatever side you're on, the oversharing or the avoiding, it's really a fear of vulnerability. And that is where we have to go. And it's death to the ego. Vulnerability is death to the ego. That is what we all fear at our heart when we are living in ego, because our biggest fear is really being seen. And, explains a lot about why there's so many relationship issues in the world, why 1 out of 2 people divorce. We really fear expressing ourselves, communicating, being seen and being heard, which is the essence of my work. Being heard is so scary for most of us. But truthfully, vulnerability is, as Brené Brown said, is the birthplace for love, belonging, joy, and real connection. We don't get it by avoiding and we don't get it from oversharing. So I invite you over this Christmas season to, with that in mind, knowing that either way, from ego, you're going to get rejected probably, or you might get rejected. Have the courage to have that more challenging conversation. Now, doesn't necessarily have to be negative. It could be positive. It could be telling someone you love them. It could be telling someone you've really missed them, but you've never said anything like that before. It doesn't have to be, I've got to have a conversation with you because I'm really, really annoyed at you. It could be, I love you, I miss you, I want you in my life. It could be that. But either way, to the ego, it's all the same thing. It's all a fear of being rejected and abandoned. But just remember that by not expressing how you feel, you're creating that barrier around you. So isn't it worth risking expressing how you feel? You're going to build more authentic relationships. You're going to be more authentic. Your voice is going to function better because you're not trying to micromanage everything you're saying. You're not trying to suppress your voice, hold your voice back. You are just coming from this place of heart and soul, and I just want to connect with you. The other point I just want to make as well, because some people might be thinking this, I'm just anticipating what some of you might be thinking, is when we come from this higher place, when we come from this more authentic place, we express how we feel, but it's not coming from such a defensive place. So oftentimes when we have suppressed how we feel for so long, and then finally we have that opportunity to express ourselves, it can come out as quite hurtful. It can come out as perhaps a bit cutting, perhaps not really how we meant it to come out. And that's because it's been stuffed for so long, like a pressure cooker, and then it all comes out. So I'm not talking about that. This is really about expressing something as and when it becomes an issue, not waiting for it to build and build and build and build and build, and then it's going to be fueled by the ego, fueled with anger, fueled with resentment, fueled with frustration. When you actually express how you feel in the moment, and you have the courage to say how you feel in the moment, things don't fester, things don't develop. You're not spending years or months or whatever pushing that emotion away. And then what happens, this is when people do say really horrible things to each other because it's been suppressed for so long. So if we can just own how we feel in the moment, it's going to actually come from a much more loving, authentic, genuine desire to connect. And that is what this is about. And that, for me, is what this whole Christmas holiday season is really about. It's about connection. It's about true connection, authenticity, expressing how we feel, not trying to say the right thing to keep people happy, but saying how we feel from our heart and without any expectation, without any agenda, as far as possible. I know we're all in egos, in bodies, but trying to just come from that more pure place of expression versus I want to say this because I want a particular outcome. So I leave that with you. And I know this is difficult. I am on my own journey with this as well. I've done a lot of work myself, but it is a constant journey, particularly around this time of year. So I have a lot of compassion for you because I know it's challenging, but I hope that helps. And I just want to challenge you to have the courage, as Bronnie Ware said, to express my feelings. So thank you so much. I will see you on my next video.